Burwash, known to some of the locals as Burwash, is still one of the prettiest places in Sussex. Once the village was alive with smugglers. It was whispered that contraband was hidden in the graveyard tombs, and secret doors and passageways are still to be found behind the innocent walls of its cottages. The skull and crossbones are believed to mark the smugglers' graves. It was in Burwash, while living at Bateman's, that Rudyard Kipling wrote his famous smuggler's song. 25 ponies, trotting through the dark, brandy for the parson, baccy for the clerk, laces for a lady, letters for a spy, and watch the wall, my darling, while the gentlemen go by. Burwash crowns the top of an east-west ridge between Heathfield and Hurst Green, some 120 feet above the rolling Sussex Weald. The sloping gardens on either side of the busy High Street look out over magnificent views which inspired not only Kipling but other local artists today. Jean Maud Roxby and Ray and Barbara Newton form a community whose work grows from the countryside and creatures around them. Jim Smith in Burwash Weald not only works with wood, clay, iron and glass, but is skilled in a dozen other crafts besides.
Oh, there isn't a better place. Of course, we lived close to a wood to start with, and I camped out in the wood, used to sleep out in the wood every night. I think I grew up with wood. I'm partly wood myself. And right from my late school days, I've been wood carving. Wood is the most beautiful material. Even a plain piece of wood, when it's polished, shows a beautiful grain up, and it produces, I can't call them works of art because I never consider myself an artist. I think too critical of what I do. I can see the faults in them. But I enjoy it, and that's the only reason I do it. The glass, I've been doing that about 20 years, I suppose. I had a go, first off, starting on old bottles, empty bottles. It was rather chippy sort of engraving. But later on I acquired a proper drill as I've got now. And I used lead crystal glasses, which you can get very complicated engravings. Yes, my father being an engineer, I mean, we had a treadle lathe to start with when we were living in Burwash. And we'd make model cannons, which we actually fired with ball bearings, because I've forgotten now, but we used to be able to make gunpowder. And it was quite fun. That, if we'd been careless, I think they could have been lethal. but it's something that I work on and then put aside for months on end until the urge comes again.
When Jim was a lad, he worked for the Kiplings, and after Rudyard's death, he perfectly restored the little watermill at the bottom of Bateman's garden. Jim's wife Edie, Dorothy Martin, and Alf Case all help in the running of the mill. Now, as Jim winnows the grain, the mill stream floods into the water wheel, and the old cogs gently engage. The fine stone-ground flour is produced in the same way as it always was since Doomsday.
They started on the restoration of the mill, and there was nobody to do the more complicated woodwork. I said I'd just keep a photographic record, but of course it didn't stop at that. So I had the saw bench down here and made all the teeth for the gears, and I finished off the hoisting. The hoisting is the framework that holds all the gears. We had an ex-professional miller working with us about 4 years until he died. He was only a youngster, actually, only about 65, you know. And what little I know about milling, I learnt from him.
Behind Dairy Court Farm, the home of Ray and Sheila Barber, the meadows are grazed by an odd assortment of contented-looking cows, bullocks, ponies, sheep and donkeys. The farm has become an animal rescue operation. Sheila knows all the animals by name.
Oh, we've got about 45 cattle of various ages, 3 donkeys, 6 ponies, 4 shires and 10 sheep. Well, I suppose really we're a bit foolish. We just couldn't send them in for slaughter. I mean, could anybody just send them in and think what's going to happen to them? We couldn't. We get plenty of butchers, and a friend of ours in the village, he's a farmer, and he sends folks round because he thinks we're a bit nutty, and they should, go, but we couldn't do that. The grey mare, she was going to be put down and sent in for meat when we bought her, and she was full of red worm. She was in a terrible state. Oh, well, if something's ill, we always have the vet straight away. And if he says, well, it's suffering or there's something wrong, then he shoots it. It's put down. But fortunately, we don't get that many, I mean, he gives them a few injections and they're all right again. We get up about 5 and I come out about 6. And Ray goes off to work at 6. And I start by cleaning all the loose boxes out. Then I go in the yard and I start on the big horses. And then there's the pens, small pens where the old cows are. The yard has to be cleaned up and they're fed. And then you sort of start again.
Sheila's mum and dad, they were Sussex people. The general weather is better down here than it is in Yorkshire, yeah, so we all came down together and we've been here ever since. The donkey's feet need trimming because it's like your fingernails. They do tend to grow, and if you don't keep them trimmed, they start to curl up and they're walking back on the heels then, which is not very nice, I mean, it's an unnatural way to walk. But if you can keep them trimmed regularly and keep them up on their toes, they keep better in themselves.
She's all right.
We've got 3 donkeys. We've got mother and daughter, and the little Jack donkey, he's the odd one out, but he came with them when they came about 8 or 9 years ago. And they've been together ever since. They go in, they're always together, they're never apart. They're friendly little things, the donkeys. I mean, how could you hurt a donkey? They're so inoffensive, aren't they? You know, they don't do anybody any harm.
Because of increased business rates, Pook's Hill Toy Museum, in the home of Anne and Stan Colby, will no longer be open to the public. But Anne's extraordinary collection of toys, many of them collector's items, are still enjoyed by her grandchildren and their friends, and used in her charity work.
Well, we started collecting toys 17 years ago because we wanted to take them round to different charity events and raise money for people that were in need, you know. We have the schools in, and we have lots of children from locally, and they all do little quizzes in the museum, so they all enjoy it. And if they don't know the answer to the quiz, we just tell them. I didn't have very many toys as a child. I was born just before the last war, and one of 6, so consequently we didn't have many toys. I'm having my childhood now. We're going to have a look at the doll's house first, eh? You're going to play with some of the things, are you? Come on then. One little girl, when she came into the museum and wrote in the comments book, in the museum visitors book, she wrote, "It makes my mum feel old," which was rather amusing. My favourite type of toys are doll's houses, and I do love teddies as well. So when my husband retires next year, we think we might build doll's houses, just for fun. Oh, they're just delightful. It's just a fantasy world, really. I suppose I'm a little girl that never grew up.
Burwash village has always been proud of the fact that it has its own voluntary fire station. It's always been manned entirely by local men since the turn of the century, when the engine was horse-drawn and homemade. Gordon Farmer is their officer in charge, and he remembers his dad on fire drill or helping the Home Guard during the war. Every Monday, the men have a practice, and the Rose and Crown is conveniently near to hand if they need to use Tom the barman as the body to be rescued.
I always came on a Monday night to watch particularly my father and my brother-in-law when they were drilling, and also in those days when the siren went, I used to get on my push bike and try and follow the appliance to see what they were doing. It's always been my ambition to be a fireman.
Rose and Crown, persons reported.
When you respond to the alerter, it can operate at night. Very often the men are here and streaking across the forecourt here with no clothes on. The first streaker was definitely not seen at Lord's. Carrying out an exercise is a completely different thing to an actual fire, because although I can visualise what I want the men to do, with no smoke, no flame, it is very difficult sometimes to get this over to the men. In the past, we've had a lot of interesting jobs. The very first drill night I attended, I went on an incident where we had to put a lady back into bed. She was being given a blanket bath by the local nurse, and she'd rolled down between the bed and the wardrobe, and the nurse couldn't lift her, and the brigade were called out to lift her back into bed.
Help! Help! Fire!
The Queen very graciously awarded me the British Empire Medal 2 years ago, which I was very proud and honoured to accept on behalf of the East Sussex Fire Brigade, and particularly the station at Burwash. We are very fortunate, really, that the employers locally support the fire brigade by allowing personnel to attend during the daytime. the lads that we've got on the station today are an excellent bunch, and I'm very proud of them.
Okay. Yeah, Tom. All right, Tom. Yeah.
In days gone by, there were 30 shops in Burwash, mostly family businesses. Some are there today, and Eddie Workman, who was born in the village, still runs the greengrocer's and the florist's shop nearby. And there's always plenty of village news and gossip to be had.
Afternoon, Mr. Pope.
Hello, Eddie.
Right.
Please.
How many would you like? My mother first started in the shop when she left school, and her and my father bought it. And that was about 40 years ago.
So she must have known Kipling.
Oh, yes. He wasn't quite as bad as a lot of people thought, but he wasn't very well thought of in the village. I think it was his wife more than him. Just under the pound there, 22 pence.
Yeah, that'd be all right, Eddie.
Thank you very much. Arranging flowers, you do tend to pick that up. When you've got to do something up for somebody. I once done up a wedding bouquet that we'd never done one before, and it's surprising, if the chips are down, you jolly well get on with it, you know. I had newspapers in the shop for about 10 years, and we'd had trouble with women's magazines, and they came late, they came a week late sort of thing. And I walked up to the garden path one day, and a big notice was stuck on the door: "I have not had a woman yet this week." And after that, I used to think up little postscripts to write on the bottom, like, well, it is only Thursday.
Are there many of the original families left in Burwash?
Oh, yes. They're bred and interbred, you know. You don't know really who you're talking to unless you're one of the locals.
Can I have his usual, please? One Coke.
One family must have, well, used to have over 100 relatives in the village. So it's a big family.
Boy! Come on, on the drink.
Is he better now after his sunstroke?
Yes, he is. Yes, that was rather a nasty shock. That was rather a hot day and a very long distance drive. And he did have a bit of a... It was rather frightening, actually.
Not enough Cokes either, I suppose.
Not enough Cokes, no. There's a good boy. Nice, isn't it? Hey, you'll be burping all the way home, won't you?
Pat Hales has been training gun dogs for as long as she cares to remember. She combines her love and patience for her many Labradors to train them to become obedient and controlled. They must learn to listen for her every command, in spite of the roar of traffic on the busy Burwash road.
Working Labradors are very much easier to teach than pet-bred Labradors who have never been trained. They want to please, and they expect to be trained. They expect you to be a disciplinarian, and they are perfectly prepared to do what you tell them, as long as you're not too soft with them. But softness in training, I mean, not softness in love and attention, which they need a lot of, because they are a very loving dog and a wonderful companion, and they make wonderful pets. But oh boy, they make wonderful working dogs. Pheasants are a crop. They have a wonderful life in the woods, and they're running wild, flying wild, and then the shooting season comes, and bang, they're either shot or they're not shot. Now, if you kill 50% of the birds, and very seldom do you get 50%, so more than 50% of the birds that are reared are left in the wild, and this, I think, is a great asset to conservation. Some people think that this sport is a cruel and a sport run for people with a lot of money, but actually there's a lot of farmers, a lot of people who really scrape the cash together. But around here, we like the friendly local shoots with the local farmers, and the main aim is to pick your game. Anything that's wounded, anything that might get away and be left to die on a shooting day. This is what we train our dogs to do. The ground must be clear before we go home. The birds are picked with dogs with soft mouths, so they must bring them in completely unmarked. They must have wonderful noses to follow and track anything that's wounded. And the more they live with you, the better they are. But discipline, yes, lots of discipline, but lots of love. My dogs are always with me when I'm at home. They sit on my knee and watch the television, and I have one that is addicted to westerns, and especially when the horses gallop across the screen, she just ups and wants to join in. I have another one who can't bear a dog to appear on the screen, and we have growls and snarls in the corner because it's a strange dog invading our home environment.
There's a good girl.
Kipling loved to walk in these beautiful fields and hills. In his imagination, he could see in them scenes from the past, the memory of battles won or lost, whole settlements that had vanished through time. In Puck's song he wrote, "See you the dimpled track that runs all hollow through the wheat?" Oh, that was where they hauled the guns that smote King Philip's fleet. See you our pastures, wide and lone, where the red oxen browse. Oh, there was a city thronged and known ere London boasted a house. And see you after the rain the trace of mound and ditch and wall. Oh, that was a legion's camping place when Caesar sailed from Gaul. And see you the marks that show and fade like shadows on the downs. Oh, they are the lines that flint men made to guard their wondrous towns.